So as many of you may know, I have an unreasonable list of demands for Shadow of the Erdtree, including, but not limited to, 6-player multiplayer, solo host invasions, co-op invasions, removal of easy anti-cheat, integration of seamless co-op traversal and exploration, covenants, covenant invasion zones, having recolorable or more customizable armor, removing the open world, expanded arenas, arena brackets, transparent matchmaking, adjustable arena timers, giving Torrent a third jump, scaling back every Ash of War, scaling back every spell, giving Torrent a fourth jump. And I'm not getting any of those. But what I might get is something really, really simple. So much so that it's obvious, and the fact that it hasn't been included in the base game feels like an oversight. I'm of course talking about being able to purchase all materials. That's right, my request is extremely simple. I think it's insane that a large portion of the materials available are not purchasable in unlimited quantities. Really simple things that are essential to crafting, like smoldering butterflies and mushrooms. I assume they are not purchasable because, like many things in Elden Ring, the mechanic was not fully realized until late in development and therefore given marginal consideration. The crafting system in Elden Ring is among my most disliked inclusions because it took a system that worked just fine and made it exponentially more tedious. The idea that I should farm for materials in a game centered entirely around action combat seems ridiculous. Why spend countless hours gathering materials when you could just spend that time playing the game? And I guess if you find it enticing to repetitively spam pickup in the same circle, that could be considered playing the game, much in the same way that putting yourself up on a cliff in Liurnia to farm invaders with blues could be considered playing the game. But for everyone who actually values their time and wants to engage, this is a major sore spot for Elden Ring. When they first announced the crafting system, I figured they were going to give you an alternative way to procure consumables. Instead, they made it the only way to get them. This is a bad system. In every other game in the series, if you needed something like a firebomb, you have to buy them or farm them. They're often limited initially by how many you can buy, but eventually you unlock them in unlimited quantities. The pricing for these items made them difficult to justify in the early game, but completely negligible in the mid to late game. This system made sense. You probably didn't have a lot of consumables at your disposal early on, so a well-timed drop from an enemy could really give you an edge, especially considering how powerful some of the consumables were. But by the time you got to the later stages of the game, consumables were less game-breaking and more of an additional tool in your arsenal. Following that logic, by the time you reached the point of the items being less impactful, you could buy them in unlimited quantities. Purchasing them was easy because you gained more souls or echoes from late-game enemies. It would be a waste of time to farm them. But Elden Ring wants to waste your time. It's an open-world game. It follows industry trends. It needs a way to make you traverse the world instead of just fast-traveling. It needs to make you go to different locations repeatedly. Not only can you not buy the vast majority of consumables, but you need to find the recipe to craft them and the requisite materials. Where do you get the materials? By farming them in the open world. Some are eventually buyable, but a huge number of them are never purchasable in unlimited quantities. That way, if you want to use a consumable, you have to ride around the world and try to find the materials, incentivizing you to play the game. Unfortunately, it's not exactly gameplay. It's padding. It's filler. It's the opposite of gameplay. It's a chore, and Elden Ring loves chores. But I hate chores. I do chores constantly. The last place I want them is in my action game. And yet, I have them. I make a new character, I gear them for PvP, and then I realize I must spend hours gathering the requisite materials for my volcano pots, or firebombs, or whatever else I intend to use. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's a constant. I've seen some players go so far as to keep saves of their builds with maxed out materials so they can use them at their leisure and reload the save whenever needed. That's such a frustrating thing to need. So strange that a game would arbitrarily encourage players to work outside the system, do something borderline cheating, just to play in a consistent fashion. And you might think it makes sense to make the items require farming. a method to discourage people from using the items repeatedly or carelessly, instead saving them for only the most necessary situations. But the game already imposes a limitation that solves that issue. You have a finite amount of usable items you can carry at any given time, limited by your available containers. Having another restriction in the base materials is redundant. It turns the crafting system into a hindrance. And there are cases where the crafting can be useful. In long-form multiplayer sessions, be it co-op or an invasion, you may run low on items. If you can get out of combat long enough to de-aggro any enemies, you can craft more. But this poses a different problem. I appreciate limitations in games. I like that I can't have infinite spark aromatics to spam to my heart's content, that I must use them sparingly. And when I'm invading, I appreciate that I can run away and make more if the host will give me the opportunity. But I don't think it's necessarily good for the overall design. I should be limited. I should only be able to use what I brought. The idea that I have an indefinite pocket of materials that I can reach into at any point really makes me feel like any limitation on items is completely arbitrary. And this infinite supply issue isn't true of some of the most powerful items. Golem arrows, for example, cannot be crafted. They must be farmed. And farming them is obnoxious. It's terrible. So much so that realistically the only people using them are manipulating the system in some way to make them convenient, either by backing up a save, trading items between characters, or outright cheating. The same is true of Starlight Shards. They're limited entirely, with less than 24 available per playthrough. Add to that their use as a trade currency, and they're essentially only used by the aforementioned super gamers. But for items that aren't limited or extremely difficult to farm, the system gives you limited at certain times and functionally unlimited at others, but always tedious and situational access. This sort of pseudo-restriction puts the crafting system in a precarious position. It replaces the merchant system, but it also doesn't, especially when you consider how bell bearings work. In Elden Ring, as I'm sure you are all aware, you can get bell bearings that you can hand in to the Twin Maiden Husk to have that bell bearings inventory available for purchase. Bell bearings are a great addition that follow in the footsteps of Dark Souls 3's Ashes. Having a key item that gives you hub access to those inventories is a great way to have the novelty of random merchants scattered throughout the world, while also allowing you to relocate their shop to the hub without clogging up the floor plan. So why, if they have this very functional mechanic in bell bearings, did they stop halfway? Why not have a bell bearing for every type of farmable material? We have them for meat, bones, crystals, stones, and all sorts of other materials. But we don't have them for Miranda powder, butterflies, fulgur bloom, and a bunch of other very useful materials. Elden Ring is a hard enough game for me to replay as is. I find it to be overly long and tiresome to make new characters, especially since every character needs to do every part of the game to have every option unlocked. The last thing I need is to run around in circles just to get the materials to use my items. It's a waste of my time, and is honestly a huge obstacle for me when I feel like playing. I'll often boot up the game and get on my Omen Killer, only to realize I'm out of Miranda powder or some other component for my perfumes. I'm then faced with having to either go and get some, wasting potentially hours of my time if I want to stock up, or just not playing that character. Usually, I just choose to not play at all. I don't have an unlimited amount of time to play, so when I can find the time, I don't want to waste it on some pointless endeavor. Sure, I could just not use the items, but that's not all that fun either. I could just back up my save or cheat, but I just don't care that much. I only care exactly enough to be bothered about it. And there's an argument to be made that it's a balancing mechanic, that I'm not supposed to have easy access as a means of discouraging me from overusing those items. But that's just not how games work. If I can get them, I'm going to get them. Making it annoying to get just makes it less likely I'll play at all, and does nothing to curb their use in the hands of cheaters or people willing to work around the system. Sure, for some people, it might be the sort of thing where it works as intended, where having limited or tedious access means they don't use the items and instead rely on non-consumable items or other methods. But for me, and anyone like me, This is exactly the sort of tedium that makes Elden Ring hard to play and replay. It puts valuable, rare items in the hands of only those willing to go outside the system. Hell, I've gotten nearly a dozen offers from sites asking me to plug their item selling service, and normally I'd think, this isn't an MMO. This isn't Counter-Strike. Why would people buy items? But then I think about just how annoying it can be to get this stuff, and I understand the impulse. Not to say I'd recommend real-world trading of any kind. I find it disruptive to the game's balance and an unwise use of funds. But in that same way, designing the game to be frustrating or tedious leads to those sorts of behaviors. It encourages people to look for a simpler solution. A solution that is a better use of their time. And I know it's just how the game works. I know, like everything in Elden Ring, it's designed for a single playthrough. For you to find a thing, make what you need, and get to the next obstacle. You're not supposed to replay the game unless you really want to. You're not supposed to PvP endlessly. You're not supposed to PvP at all. You're supposed to ride around, marvel at the world, kill God and all their friends, and wait for DLC. It's just not the way I play. On the whole, it's just a small gripe, which is why I think it should be so easy to amend. Just give me bell bearings for doing side quests in the DLC. Let me find the frenzied merchant homeland and take their material mother dough. Give me bell bearings for all the different materials. Let me stop farming. Let me stop riding my horse through a canyon over and over just to get some volcanic stone. I want to play the game. I want to PvP. I don't want to gather. I want to hunt. That's all for this one. If you feel the same, please leave a comment of your least favorite material to farm down below so we can collectively whinge to From Software about all the little things they've neglected. If you want to see more of this content, please consider liking and subscribing. I release new videos every week and I've got lots to complain about. Also, by popular demand, I'm going to start streaming, so that should be a good way to attack me in a more direct fashion. Until then, thank you for watching.